Welcome. Today we're going to talk about academic language. Academic language includes keywords that help writers to produce specific types of writing. Let's take a look at our first example here. Our first one is evaluate. So as you study, as you learn more, as you read more, as you write more, you become an expert on many different subjects and you form opinions on these different subjects based on facts and knowledge. You become smarter and therefore you become better able to evaluate information. So when you evaluate, what you're doing is that you're sharing your educated assessment, your educated opinion about an idea. So the kinds of words that you'll run across, these keywords listed over here on the left, these are the words that can let you know that you're being asked to evaluate. So you're going to run across judge, critique, evaluate, explain, reason, and assess. So anytime you evaluate, you're going to share your assessment of an idea, a thing, or a process. All right, our next type of writing is persuade. So when you're going to persuade, you're going to try to convince your reader to agree with you. You're going to try to get your reader to change their thoughts, change their opinions, or change their decisions. Now, regardless of what type of persuasion that you're doing or what type of writing that you're doing, you always want to use factual data to back up your persuasion. We've got a big problem in our society right now where people are believing just anything. They're not looking at the facts. They're not looking at the information. They're just kind of grabbing a hold of any information that comes along and saying, yeah, this seems good, and running with it. You want to make sure that any time that you're using persuasive writing, that you're using data, expert opinions, scientific studies, statistics, quotations, and professional references. They're using that type of data, that type of information to back up your persuasion. And the keywords you'll run across that tell you you're going to persuade will be these: persuade, convince, get agreement from, defend, and influence. So our next type of writing is summarize. So a summary is a shortened version of the whole. So let's say that you were asked to read an article and then you're asked to summarize it. So let's say that that article is 10 pages long. Your summary will be about a page because your summary is a shortened version of the whole. Now, when we're writing a summary, we don't include anything except what was in the reading. So we don't include opinion or analysis or persuasion or anything else. We just include what was in the original piece. And the keywords that can help us as writers know when we're being asked to summarize are these: in short, in summary, summarize, to sum up, in conclusion, or to wrap up. So our next type of writing is compare and contrast. This one can be a little bit confusing because it's asking for two different things. So to compare is to show similarities between two or more things. You're showing how things are similar. And then to contrast is to show differences between two or more things. So you're showing how things are different. So being able to identify if things are alike or different can support your learning and your communication skills in many different areas. Typically in a piece of writing, you're going to focus on one or the other. You're not going to try to compare and contrast. That ends up with these pieces of writing that say these two things are the same and different. That's not really helpful. But if you can take two things and you can show, look, these two things are actually pretty similar to each other. Or if you can say these two things are actually very different from each other, and then you follow that up with a lot of good, strong, factual data, that could be a really valuable piece of writing. The keywords that you'll run across that will suggest to you that you need to compare and contrast will include these: compare, contrast, similarities, differences, on the other hand, conversely, and rather. All right, our next word here is analyze. So with analyze, we're going to do something different. We're going to take that whole thing and we're going to break it into parts. And in our writing, in analysis writing, you're talking about the parts. So let's say that you read a book and then you're going to write an analysis of that book. So your analysis might be about how the writer created the different characters. Might also be about the plot structure. And it might also be about the tone that the writer used. So what you're doing is you're taking that whole novel and you're breaking it into parts. You're breaking it into the characters and the plot and the tone. Anytime that you're doing an analysis, you're going to talk about how those parts work together, how they influence each other. And you're also going to talk about the patterns and the connections that you see in the piece. The keywords that can help you out are these: analyze, examine, determine, explain the elements, and break down. So look for those words when you're going to analyze. And finally, anytime that you're asked to cite your source, this is where you're being asked to tell, where did you get this information from? Again, I mentioned earlier that we've got a problem in our society right now where people are just grabbing onto any information and saying, yep, this must be true. It's on the internet, so it must be true. And that is very much not the case. Not everything is true. And what we need to do as writers is that we need to evaluate sources. We need to look at those sources. We need to decide, is this source academic? Is it professional? And there are 5 things we look at. We're going to look at, is the source credible? Is it accurate? Is it relevant? Is it current? And is it objective? Those are the 5 things you're going to look at. And if the source you're looking at fails in any of those 5, move on. Just go find another source. That source isn't useful. But anytime that you're asked to cite your source, what you're doing is you're including a citation using one of the research styles. I included an example here for MLA, which stands for Modern Language Association. MLA is used in language arts classes all across the country at the high school and college level. And there's an example here with this Jennifer Jameson, The 3 Paths to Financial Security. This isn't a real source. I invented it. But what you're doing here is you're citing that source. You're saying, hey, this is where I got this information. So anytime you're asked to cite your source, that's what you will include. All right, so I hope that this information on academic language is helpful to you. I hope that it helps you to identify what type of writing that you're going to do, and so that your writing is always perfectly accurate and exactly what's being asked for. Hope that's helpful. Good luck with your writing.